From Theory to Practice, Sustainability Tools for Lifespan Respite Grantees and Partners. We're delighted that you could all join us today. As you probably all know, my name is Jill Kagan, and I am Program Director of the ARCH National Respite Network and Resource Center. This particular webinar picks up where a previous webinar presented by the Finance Project in May 2012 left off. That first webinar provided a very excellent introduction to concepts related to sustainability planning, and ARCH followed up on that effort with a webinar and a conference call in which we highlighted many state examples of sustainability efforts and summaries of a variety of possible federal and state funding resources that Lifespan Respite Programs could look to once their federal grant was expended. All of this information is still available on the ARCH website and can be accessed at any time. Today's webinar is going to focus on sharing very practical tools and processes for actually undertaking a deliberative and thoughtful sustainability planning process. And I'm sure that this is of special interest and importance to many of you whose federal Lifespan Respite grants are nearing their completion very soon. And it's never too late to begin a sustainability planning process. The Sustainability Toolkit that is going to be reviewed today includes the Sustainability Workbook with 5 modules. This package has already been shared with the Lifespan Respite grantees who should have received this via UPS in the last week. Due to limited resources on our part, we're asking the grantees to please share this workbook with your state respite coalitions and your other primary partners. The Lifespan Respite Implementation Guide and the Financing Strategies chart that ARCH helped prepare in collaboration with the Finance Project and some additional clarifying materials were sent to all of you electronically also in the past week. We've also posted all of this information on the Lifespan Respite Grantee Partner website if you've lost your email with all the attachments. If you are a Lifespan Respite grantee and you did not yet receive the workbook, please send me an email and let me know, and we'll try to track that down for you. I'm very privileged as we get started here to introduce Greg Link, who's with the Administration for Community Living. Greg is the Lifespan Respite Federal Project Officer, and he has graciously agreed to come and offer a few words of welcome. So Greg, go ahead.
Thanks, Jill, and welcome everyone. I think this is a really wonderful opportunity for all of the grantees. As each of you know, through the application process that you went through when you received your Lifespan Respite grants, the Administration for Community Living puts an emphasis on sustainability of grant projects. And I felt it was very important that we not only talk about that and promote that, but then also provide some tools and resources that can help grantees successfully sustain all of the great work that they've implemented. And so that's why we've begun working with the Finance Project through the ARCH National Respite Network and Resource Center to, as Jill mentioned, first, have some targeted webinars about the notion of sustainability, and we're gradually delving in a bit more deeply and providing some very concrete tools and resources that hopefully will be very useful to you no matter where you are in the course of your Lifespan Respite grant. So I'm looking forward to the content today, I think, as well as getting a better understanding of the tools that are available and that you all have now. So with that, I will just turn it back over to Jill, and we can get started.
Great. Thank you, Greg. I'm going to introduce you to our presenters today. First, we have Sean Stilo-Griffin, who is with the Finance Project. Sean is the Vice President of Education and Children's Services there. She provides technical assistance, training, and consultation to programs and initiatives collaborative groups, and local, state, and federal agencies who are implementing education reform and children and family service initiatives across the country. Ms. Griffin has extensive knowledge of federal and state funding streams and strategies for managing complex budgets and monitoring multi-state programs. She's accompanied by Nalini Ravindranath. Nalini joins her. She conducts research, assists in developing tools for policymakers and practitioners, and assists in planning and delivering technical assistance. So we're very, very pleased to have both of these women who have a wealth of experience in program management and consulting, and we're delighted to have them here as our presenters today. So Sean, I turn it over to you, and thank you both for being here.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. This is Sean Philo Griffin. I'm so pleased to be with you, and Nalini is here with me as well. And yes, for those of you who are looking carefully at my picture, that is a bowl of ice cream in my hand. I thought that picture was particularly appropriate as we join you from Washington, D.C. today, where it is about 1,000,000 degrees and humid. So welcome. We're glad to, as Jill noted, offer you this follow-on webinar to the really great introduction that my colleague Laura Martinez provided to you last year in May 2012. And I know from talking to Jill and from reviewing the really great materials that she's shared about all of you, that many of you have been thinking and really working actively towards the long-term sustainability of your grant activities, and we are really pleased that Greg and Jill have made providing you some additional tools, additional tools that are a real priority as you move on. So we always like to start our webinar presentations with, first off, a reminder and an invitation to ask those questions via the question box at any time. That's part of the reason why we always have two folks in the room for a webinar, so we can track those questions and really address them as through the course of the presentation. Sometimes I know if I don't get a question down, it's gone. So we invite you to type those in as they come to mind. Also, always like to start by discussing or by sharing our goal for the webinar, which is really to introduce you, as Jill mentioned, to some tools and materials that we've worked on collaboratively that will help you in your efforts to develop sustainability plans. So we're going to start with a question for you, which is one thing you hope to learn from today's webinar, and you are able to type that response in the question box. We'll give you a moment to enter in some ideas. And Emily, can you remind folks how to, oh, there they are popping in. I just need to adjust my screen here. So some folks would like to find some non-governmental funds for respite. A lot of folks interested in additional funding sources. Interest in ways to engage corporate partners. Oh, and always another very important and key challenge and interest is how to assist coalition members to move towards strong discussions and robust discussions about sustainability and funding. How do others fund respite? How to engage private and nonprofit partners. Oh, wow. And this, one that just got typed in that is probably the one of the perennial questions is how to prioritize the many sustainability strategies for implementation. So hopefully the discussion that we have today and the tools that we're going to share are going to help you focus on some of these issues and really provide you those strategies and those ideas. And I think one of the most important results that comes from a sustainability planning process is that it creates a common language and a common opportunity for a set of peers to have conversations about sustainability, because it is a complex strategic and business planning process. Many of you are doing the work that you are doing because of a passion for that work. You have a passion about the Respite program, what it does, how it assists your communities. Not all of you started doing this work because you're financial whizzes. So in some cases, the idea of sitting down and doing some business planning or doing some strategic planning, particularly one that focuses on financing specific strategies and activities, can be a daunting task. What we really tried to do with these tools and resources that you received by email and hopefully at this point have received via UPS is to help really create a nice roadmap to ensure that you get to the end result of a written sustainability plan and to really help you have some very fruitful conversations about what the full cost of your initiative is and a nice plan that is prioritized, to come up with the resources to support those costs. And notice that we talk broadly about resources. In some cases, as you learned during the last webinar that we presented, certainly in some cases those resources are going to be dollar resources, but we've got some really great examples that we'll share later and some additional examples on the ARCH website of work that your peers have done that to sustain their programs that aren't solely focused on sustaining via new cash resources. So a sustainability plan should really become one of those very key documents in your file cabinet. It should be something that you go to time and time again to take the pulse, to clarify where you are and where you want to go, to measure your progress against some benchmarks that you've created. And that really is going to be that overarching guide for your initiative over time. It's one of my favorite stories of how a colleague with whom I've worked used her sustainability plan. Is she boiled down her plan to a very clear one-page, it was front and back, but it was one page, but one-page list of prioritized sustainability strategies. And each time her governance group came together, they checked that list of sustainability strategies and really were able to check off and mark off where they were They measured their progress on a regular basis and kept going back to that sustainability plan to make sure that they were staying true to the guidance that they had developed for themselves. So I know a big part of the last webinar that many of you participated in was a discussion of the key elements of sustainability. And I'm going to, before we go to that slide, I want you to think back and remember a sort of an exercise that Laura had you do, which was for you to think about an organization other than your own that has been a long-standing member of your community, an organization that does important work and that has been sustained over the long term. And when people talk about that organization, think about what do they say or what do they notice about that organization? How do they describe that organization when they talk about it to others? I think as you think about an organization that's been sustained over the long term in your community, you will think of these key elements of sustainability. You may not have exactly the terminology that's listed here, but you probably came up with some form of these key elements. I know this is review of earlier material that's presented, but it's important review, and it helps us to frame and think about our conversations today. Certainly, you need to start any sustainability planning process with a clarification of your organization's vision. It's in some cases, the vision can be a sentence or two that's gotten thrown around over time, and perhaps if it has not been revisited for a while, those words have maybe lost some of their initial intent or their initial meaning. So when undertaking a sustainability process, we always suggest that the place you start is by really shoring up your base and shoring up your foundation. It's like building a house. The vision and the results orientation are the very important base or foundation of the sustainability of your organization. Once you have your vision very clearly articulated, you're then able to think about how you define success for your initiative. What are the results that you want to achieve? And results may change over time. I used to be a program manager for a federal education grant program, and sometimes my grantees would be surprised when I would tell them at middle of the grant monitoring visit that it's okay to rethink and redefine what success is for your program midway through the grant cycle. There may be conditions that have occurred that have caused you to really rethink your program as you're implementing it. And in cases like that, it's very important to also think about your results orientation. We often think about the next set of elements, the strategic financing orientation, and then 4, 5, 6, and 7 as almost the two wings of a house if you're building your sustainable house, your house of sustainability. One wing being having a very clear sense of the finances. So how are you going to ensure that over time there's enough money to keep the doors open, that you've got the cash flow to to have some insurance against unanticipated challenges that come up along the way, that you're able to provide the service that you said you would provide in your results orientation. The other wing of the house are what we call the non-fiscal pieces of sustainability: the adaptability to changing conditions, the broad base of community support, the key champions, the strong internal systems. Really, without those elements being shored up and being attended to, you're not going to be able to keep up both sides of the house. Really, both pieces need to be there, or you're going to end up with a lopsided roof with maybe plenty of money, but not the strong internal system or not the community support to keep the program running and to keep the services going. You know, often we receive questions like, you know, do you have to have all the elements to be sustainable? No, yes, you need to have, yes and no, I think is probably the answer. It's good to have all of the elements to some degree to ensure your sustainability. Maybe you're working on your key champions. Maybe you have had a change in administration that has shifted the focus of a particular agency or a particular organization that you have been able to count as a supporter before. Organizations, grants have life cycles, and over those life cycles, the strength of some of these elements may wax and wane with time, but typically a successful initiative has all of these elements present to some extent. Okay, so during our last conversation, the last webinar, you talked a lot about the planning to plan aspect of sustainability planning, of the planning process, and we talked about creating a sustainability team. Really, this sort of planning is much more effective when you have a very a good team of folks who are all participating in a planning process and bringing diverse opinions and skill sets to the table. So right now, we would like you to type your response to the question, who would you have on your sustainability team, so that we can get some ideas about who you might engage. Oh, lots of really good ideas for your teams, and I bet some of you have started to build teams based on these responses. That's terrific. Some of the ideas are key policymakers in state government, professional fundraisers, that's a terrific idea, caregivers with passion, lifespan respite users and advocates, as well as state representatives, coalition members who have done this work in their own organizations, which is terrific. Different folks within the agency, family caregivers. I really like that so many of you mentioned in your sustainability planning team consumers of the service. That's a really important voice to have participate in decisions around how best to design those your program going forward, and what might be some opportunities for creating a really robust program. I also, like someone also just typed in, faith community leaders, who are a terrific, terrific asset. And we've got some examples, and I know there are some examples around of coalitions around the country who have really had some success serving these folks, or I'm sorry, engaging faith community leaders. And there was also a question asking if we'll share the responses via email to all of the questions, and we absolutely will. So in addition to the archived recording, we'll make sure that we have the questions typed out and also capture your responses. I do think one of the, our shorthand at TFP for who to include on your sustainability team are really the folks with passion, as you mentioned, folks with knowledge of the program or initiative that you're trying to sustain, supporters, folks who have over time been supporters of your program. It can also be useful to include on your sustainability planning team someone who is perhaps less bought in to the respite services that you're trying to provide in your community, or less bought into the work that you're trying to do. It can always be useful to have folks around the table who have the power to implement and support your sustainability plan. It's also useful to have people around the table who might challenge your sustainability plan. So, you should have received, and if you haven't, you'll be receiving very soon, a box of materials, the biggest piece of which is this folder, this box folder, the Sustainability Planning Workbook. We'll talk more about what's inside this box in just a minute. You also received both via email, as Jill mentioned, as well as in the box in hard copy, some additional resources to support sustainability plan. Again, your work is really valued by your stakeholders, your community, and most importantly, your ARCH technical assistance team, and Greg, your federal program officer. So you all are incredibly lucky that they have asked us to sort of pull together these materials to give you a roadmap. The implementation guide, the workbook, which we already mentioned, another resource titled The Matrix of Modules, Tasks, Tools, and Resources, and some project planning worksheets and financing strategy examples are all there for you to use. This can be a challenging process to undertake. It requires some time, it requires thinking, it requires planning, and it's not everyone has the resources or even the time to be able to bring in a facilitator, bring in a national resource to spend time face-to-face to support a sustainability planning process. And what we tried to do was really provide you all of the resources that that you might need to facilitate this effort on your own. So the first supporting guide is the implementation guide. It really gives you that overall introduction to the planning process. It reviews those key elements of sustainability. it gives you some considerations for a successful planning process. And one of my favorite pieces was providing you some of our top secret, not so top secret actually, but some of the facilitation tips and tricks that have been, we found to be tried and true when we go out in the field. You know, often Nalini and I and our other colleagues here at the Finance Project most often are doing webinars or coming to conference or distance learning opportunities to talk to large groups about sustainability, but we're always happiest when we get to go out into the field and really work through this process with sets of grantees. And we always learn so much. I've been doing this work for many, many years, and I still learn something new every time I go out. So we tried to capture all of that information in this implementation guide to really help you gain an understanding of the process before you start to work through the process. One way that you might use the implementation guide is to pull out some of those pieces on the introduction to the sustainability planning process or the key elements of sustainability to give some background information to your planning team members about the process itself. So the next piece is the big box. And it is a big box, and it's very comprehensive. As I talk on the next few slides, I'll break it down a little bit for you so that you can see that, well, there's a lot of information there. It's laid out in a very progressive and logical framework. And part of the reason it's so large is because it's providing an awful lot of instructions and guidance and the background thinking that went into designing the framework and facilitating actual sustainability planning efforts. Also, in that sustainability planning workbook, in the back of the first module, the Planning's Plan module, there should be a plastic envelope with a CD-ROM. If it's not in that workbook, check inside the box, check inside the other modules. Sometimes they get loose in shipping and shake around. But on that CD-ROM, you will find the Word copies of the worksheets that are in the Sustainability Planning Workbook, as well as some introductory PowerPoint presentations that you can use during your facilitation. If you are, and this is something that we've had to say in the past couple of years, as people start to transition away from laptops and computers that have CD-ROM drives now. If you are one of those folks who doesn't have a CD-ROM drive in your laptop or your desktop computer because you've got a fancy new one, we can absolutely get the materials to you on a thumb drive. So when you open up the box, you'll see that there are 5 wire-bound notebooks. It is they are labeled, titled in order, Module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And really, for the most part, those the conversations about sustainability are best had in that order, starting with the building a sustainable initiative and working through writing the plan. You may find, just like when you do a recipe for the first time, happens to me not uncommonly, that it's always a good idea to read through the entire recipe first before moving ahead. And when you do that, when you read through or at least even sort of scan through the sustainability workbook modules, you may say, and often people will say, that they'd like to have some of the conversations that appear in Module 4 a little bit earlier. And you know what? That's okay. You're going to customize this process as you go along. You know, certain things are going to make sense for certain folks at different points in the process. But do before you do too much planning, make sure that you read through the workbook and get a sense for how all of those discussions are laid out before you start making decisions about doing some shifting around. I always find this graphic to be really useful and important. And this is really our effort to crosswalk the 8 elements of sustainability to the actual sustainability planning process and the way the modules are laid out. So if you could, and you're not sort of seeing my my hand motions here for you all, imagine that there is on top of the 4 ovals on the right-hand side an oval for planning to plan. That planning to plan really represents the thinking and the organizing work that needs to happen before you get into the actual planning process. Then once you get into modules 2 through 5, which are the ones represented by the 4 ovals on the right, you see how they align to the 8 elements of sustainability. Again, remember that we talked about the importance of really building from an agreed upon base of vision and results. We have definitely tried to do some sustainability planning in an a la carte sort of a way. So when we've worked with clients or when we've provided some coaching and consultation and folks have said, we do not need to spend any time on vision and results. We just spent, you know, we just had a board retreat. We're really good there. That's nothing for us to worry about. Inevitably, we find as we get deeper into the sustainability planning process that we probably should have spent some time up front on the vision and results and end up having to have those discussions later on. Again, that points to really the iterative nature of the materials in the module. I'm actually going to pause there for a minute and give folks a chance, because we've been on together for just about half of our time, for about 40 minutes, and I want to pause and give folks a chance to ask questions either about some of the key elements of sustainability or the resources that are inside the Sustainability Planning Workbook box. There was one question that was entered, which is, where is the implementation guide? You should have received a folder inside of your UPS box that had the Sustainability Planning Workbook that had all of these additional materials in them. And if you did not receive them in hard copy, you should have also received an email from Jill. Probably the best way to get a copy of the implementation guide, the matrix of modules, tasks, tools, and resources, and the other additional pieces is to email Jill, and she'll help link you up. But I'll pause there for a minute and give folks a chance to type in any questions that have popped into their heads thus far. Are we willing to review and provide feedback on draft sustainability plans? Well, we're going to talk about, Sharon and John, it sounds like you all might be some great volunteers for a piece that we're going to introduce later, a new strategy that we've taken in the technical assistance that we provide folks to sort of bring these webinars to life, right? Webinars are great ways to get very cost-efficient ways to provide an introduction to materials and for people to convene from across the country. However, with a topic as complex as sustainability, it can be nice to have a smaller opportunity to create a community of practice as well. And we're going to work with 2 grantees between the end of July and September conference call to kind of work with them on their sustainability planning process. So that is one opportunity to review and provide feedback to draft sustainability plans. I think it's also a great strategy, and you know, from talking and working with Jill, I know that you all have really created a nice community of practice among this set of grantees. And just like you would give a grant that you had written to somebody or that you had written to someone outside of your program to read to make sure that you are you've captured everything appropriately, you can do the same with a sustainability plan. It's terrific to give the plan out to you know, somebody in another program within your agency, or you know, to your husband or wife or son or daughter to read to see if they understand what it is that you're talking about in your sustainability plan. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions that have popped in. Okay, we'll keep them coming, and we will keep watching the question box. We do have a polling question, which Emily will put up in a minute, which is, since the introductory webinar, which area of sustainability planning process have you made the most progress? I believe Emily has opened that poll.
I'll leave it open just a couple more seconds.
Thanks, Emily.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And are you able to see the results?
Let's see. Hide poll results to enable screen sharing. Oh, I didn't hide them. Hold
on. 43%, there you go, 43% chose vision and results. 14% said Module 2 strategic financing. 36% said Module 3 community supports and key champions. And then 7% said Module 4 developing a plan.
Great. Thanks very much, Emily.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting. I'm glad to see so many of you working on the vision and results piece of the work. You really have taken to heart the importance of making sure that that vision is shored up and that you can really, that you're able to clearly communicate and clearly articulate what it is you're trying to do. You know, a respite program can be I imagine in some of your states and in some of your communities, a difficult program to explain to some folks. So I think it's time well spent. It's always time well spent focusing on the vision and results. And it does seem to, particularly because of the nature of many of your programs, which are supporting very strong and working with strong coalitions, that you would also feel like you've done, made some progress in community supports and key champions. It's really the nature of your program. And for the 7% of you that are working on your plan, great job. Good for you, and keep working. So there's another polling question that Emily will go ahead and open right now, which is sort of the reverse, right? So you've made progress in some areas. Where are you having your challenges?
Okay.
Okay. So 59% of you are feeling challenged by the strategic financing piece of this work, and then the next most common challenge is developing a plan. Not at all uncommon. Certainly in this very constrained economic environment where there used to be far more opportunities for discretionary grants and accessing philanthropic funds and other different types of government funding to support any services, social services or educational services in the community. Finding sources of funding that are sustainable over the long term is a real challenge. So I'm not surprised that many of you feel challenged there. Also, just this sheer having enough time really to write and develop a sustainability plan is another challenge. You know, we are, many of you work in fairly small offices. Well, you have strong coalition members. Undoubtedly, those coalition members are active in lots of other efforts in the community, and it can be a real challenge to try to find the time to address this very important task. So I understand the challenges. One of the solutions to those challenges is this matrix of modules, tasks, tools, and resources. So those of you who have had a chance to open up the modules in the Sustainability Planning Workbook box have probably noticed that each of those modules have some very clear and specific goals and very clear and specific conversations that are facilitated through the tools and resources in that module. And this matrix where we listed all of the module goals is an effort for us to help you think about and to think really strategically, knowing that your time for this task is limited, about what are some of the most critical issues to the sustainability of your initiative, so that you can take a very careful look at the specific goals, the specific conversations that are related to each of the modules, and really decide where to focus some of your time. Certainly it seems like as a result of that last poll, many of you are going to want to focus your time on the strategic financing portion of the work. Now that you, once you look at the matrix and look at Module 3, which is the strategic financing module, you can see that there are different elements and different components of that conversation that may align to some of the challenges that you're having within that broad category. Is the challenge that you don't really have a clear sense of the cost of what it is you're trying to sustain? Is that the issue? Is the issue that you just don't really have a good sense of what funding sources are available, and there are specific tools, specific worksheets that provide a graphic organizer for those conversations? Another very important piece is the actual project planning that goes along with this. And I won't, I could get on my soapbox and go on for quite a bit of time about the planning to plan piece of this work, but I will simply say fail to plan, plan to fail. You all, I'm sure, have participated in strategic planning processes that have been successful and those that have been not so successful. And you know, the project planning worksheet really helps you keep the entire process on schedule and on track, to very clearly lay out the roles and responsibilities of the partners participating in the process. And one of the really important pieces, I think, is to align to other planning and strategic priorities of your coalition, of the state agency with whom you work, of you know, any community group. There might be a number of different organizations that you want to align your process to. So anticipating that the strategic financing piece was going to be a challenge and was going to be an area that you wanted to spend some time diving deeply on, we're going to do that today. And we really, at the Finance Project, we think of 5 financing strategies. And that really a truly sustainable initiative uses a combination of these 5 strategies to find the funds to keep themselves, to keep their doors open, to keep on providing services in their community. And those are making better use of existing resources. These are detailed on slides to come, but I just want to share them with you now. To maximize federal and state revenue, to create more flexibility in existing resources, to build public-private partnerships, and to create new funding sources, dedicated funding sources. We're going to provide some examples, specific respite examples of these financing strategies. And these examples are pulled from the chart of financing strategies that were part of this packet that was sent to you. Now, understandably, we're going to present some strategies and present some options that are going to work some places and they're not going to work other places. We definitely understand. We definitely get that. And really, we provide these examples as a vision of what's possible and really a list that can help to grease the wheels, if you will, of your own brainstorming and your own creativity when you meet with your sustainability planning team. So making better use of existing resources, we think of that as operating more efficiently, taking some funds that you recoup from that more efficient operation and reinvesting them into parts of your work that are more difficult to find funding for, and also certainly embedding lifespan respite activities into ongoing state activities. So a number of grantees have collect respite provider lists as parts of a need assessment or environmental scan. So there's a couple of ways to try to capture information that can be difficult to capture. Some states have been able to develop or expand less costly respite by using volunteers instead of by using certified staff. Again, understanding that these examples, because of policy and legislative differences across the states, may not work for everyone. And I would invite you, as we're going through these examples, to definitely type in anything that your state or coalition has been able to use as a sustainability strategy. So certainly maximizing federal and state revenue is a key strategy. We don't always mean that, for us, maximizing federal and state revenue is not always a synonym for grant writing. Certainly you want to take advantage of federal and state grants that seem appropriately aligned to the work that you do. And I think that is the biggest piece is to stay very aligned to what you do. For those of you who work who are part of coalitions, you may have had the experience in the past where you went after some grant funding or some grant support, or were offered some the opportunity to apply for grant support based on your prior history of good results. And you may have found when you explored that opportunity more deeply that it was perhaps not as well aligned to the work that you were doing. We definitely want you to always have some way that as a leadership team you will constantly asking yourselves, is this aligned to our vision and to our results orientation? Is this grant that we're applying for going to help us achieve our results? So grant writing, but also leveraging other funding sources that perhaps have a broader use, like the Tobacco Master Settlement Funds. Those funds are, they don't have a whole lot of restrictions on their use. They can be used to support a whole host of services, and the Nebraska Respite Network has been able to leverage those funds to support services, but also system infrastructure, which can be difficult to fund, as many of you know. Also, refinancing, administrative claiming are some other strategies for maximizing federal and state revenue. The Arizona Lifespan Respite Program has a contract with the state's Title V program to fund respite services for children with special needs through a voucher program. So really thinking about and almost doing a fiscal map of sorts, really paying attention to what resources are there out there from some unexpected sources, perhaps, that could support your work. The third strategy, creating more flexibility in existing resources. We think about this blending and braiding, coordination, pooling, developing interagency fiscal partnerships. Sometimes you're even able to do some decategorization where you can petition a state agency to remove some of the restrictions on how funding is used, or remove some of the reporting requirements or contracting requirements to push more money towards services instead of towards administrative costs. The Alabama and Tennessee folks are able to have created a coordinated funding stream to support respite. Really great tactic to help decrease the administrative time and the administrative cost of managing a bunch of different smaller state agency funds in a bunch of different locations. Nebraska uses state funds and federal Part C early intervention funds to support the network's infrastructure. That is one of the biggest challenges that we hear from programs and initiatives, no matter what field of education or social services they are working in. It is very difficult to pay for the infrastructure and the support for a program. It's much easier to find sources to pay for the provision of service. So it's always a good day when you can find some funding sources that will support infrastructure costs. Public-private partnerships, certainly in providing actual services, it's great to have a public-private partnership, but you should also think about establishing public-private partnerships for other uses, for communications about your program, for technical assistance, to help with grassroots or community engagement. All of these are great, activities that you can seek a private partner to support you in. The South Carolina Respite Coalition provided mini grants to the faith community to engage them in respite service delivery, and they've really been able to build a very nice network that has a broad reach into the community and are able to really meet folks who need the respite service where they are. And finally, and yes, these increase in complexity as we go along here, creating new dedicated funding streams. A number of states, Alabama, Colorado, Nebraska, and Wisconsin, have advocated for state budget line items to support respite. New Jersey, I know this because of work that I've done there with the Boys and Girls Club. New Jersey has very few restrictions on how casino, gaming, and those sorts of revenues can be used. And the New Jersey statewide respite care program was able to access casino revenues to support their services. Also in New Jersey, a number of boys and girls clubs are able to raise a lot of funds through bingo because the way that the rules and the regulations are written there in New Jersey, and it enables charities to run their own bingo nights, and they found them to be incredibly successful. Again, this is not going to work every place. We are seeing a trend towards a number of communities in the country being very open to special taxing districts, special tax levies, and fees and narrowly based taxes to support resources that the community and services that the community feels are really important. Particular pieces of education like arts and music programs, after-school programs, summer programs. We are starting to see programs, comprehensive services for very young children and families. We are starting to see more and more jurisdictions being interested in supporting efforts that they think are important to their communities in manners like that. Some folks have gained some funding and some resources by generating unrelated business income, perhaps providing some technical assistance or some training to other groups on, help maybe to businesses on helping their staff and family members access respite services would be an opportunity for some coalitions or some partners in coalitions to provide. So this was a very, very limited list of examples. I wonder if anybody wants to share something really new and exciting that they've been able to, a funding stream or a sustainability strategy that they have, that they've developed over time. Feel free to type that in the question box. Okay, so keep typing if you're working on it. I'm not sure if anybody's found that pot of gold yet or not, but if we get some examples typed into the question box, we will absolutely share them. I do see that we're getting close to the end of our time together, and I want to give plenty of time for general questions at the end, as well as any closing that Jill needs to do. So as I mentioned, in response to the question, are you willing to review and provide feedback on draft sustainability plans? We want to be able to provide some exemplar sites that we'll work with. And we've decided that over the next month, in close coordination and close planning with Jill Kagan, that the Finance Project will be able to provide some additional coaching and technical assistance to 2 sites who will try out these extra materials that we have that we've given you. And it's really a chance to get some ideas, get some feedback on where you've been going. Folks who responded in the 7%, I believe, who had started on the sustainability planning process. You might be good choices, or you might be ready to take advantage of this additional coaching and technical assistance. Up on the screen right now, you're seeing some questions that you can ask yourselves to really assess your readiness for sustainability planning. Jill did say in her introduction that it's never too late to start sustainability planning. There can be sometimes that are better than others. So these are some questions that you can ask yourselves. I also noticed that someone typed in that they don't have a solution. They haven't found the pot of gold, but they do have a question, and that question is, how did the program that created voucher systems from pots of government money, for example, states, get their start? And I can, one response I can give to that question, and I would welcome any of the states who are participating today, who have been able to employ that sustainability strategy, that financing strategy, to type in a couple of thoughts. But one of the most important ways to get this kicked off is just to make sure that you're pulling the people who have responsibility for those pots of money and who implement or monitor those different programs around the table on a regular basis, and that you're all sharing and talking about and seeking the overlap in services provided and in members of the community that you serve. That's a really great start to being able to create some of these voucher systems and create some of the pooling strategies. It really does start. It does start by bringing people to the table to talk about it. And we had some, Jennifer, it looks like, typed in, you got to find that champion within a department to advocate from the inside. And that's absolutely right. It may not be the program head or the program leader. It may be a staff member inside of an office. But certainly coming together on a regular basis around the table and starting to think about and talk about what's possible. And the sustainability planning process can be a great way to engage some of those folks. One of the a famous quote in philanthropic circles is, if you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. And that's also true when working with your peers and thinking about ways that you can collaborate to better serve your communities. So again, we will send out an exemplar survey from Jill and ask you to respond to a few questions. Nothing too challenging or difficult. No survey that's going to take hours for you to complete. But to simply respond to these three questions. Do you have identified goals for your sustainability process? And have you identified specific sustainability challenges? The second is that a successful sustainability planning process requires the commitment of a core planning group of about 6 to 10 individuals, critical to the long-term success of the Lifespan Respite initiative over several months. Have you, and it sounds like many of you have you identified who would be in this group of stakeholders? Do you think, are the stakeholders at a place where they can commit to putting some time in together? And the last question, which is the timing right for sustainability planning? Has your leadership been in place for some time? are there other major issues or efforts that might require some very dedicated time and attention? If you've had a recent change in leadership, if you've got some other critical issues going on that might impede with the sustainability planning process, you might want to get some of those addressed before embarking on a process. So one of the questions is, what is the timeline for connecting with the two groups? What's the deadline? Well, we'd like to be able to select our exemplar grantees by the end of July. So we have asked that you complete and submit the exemplar survey by July 26th. Again, it's those 3 questions. Throughout August, we will, once we've chosen the exemplar grantees, we'll all connect via email. So Nalini and Jill and I will connect via email, and we'll talk with the chosen exemplars to determine some time to provide a telephone conference call, technical assistance, and coaching. And then we will, by being an exemplar grantee, you are agreeing to discuss progress and challenges and answer questions about your progress and challenges during the September Lifespan Respite Conference call. We used this approach in another technical assistance project that was kind of a blend of webinars and work in between the webinars with exemplar grantees, and it was really wonderful for peers to hear from colleagues about, how did this process really go? You've got these people who are, who do this all the time and who are out there kind of giving us advice on how to do it, but the folks really valued hearing from their peers of how the framework really translated to real life. We have on the slide presentation a list of really terrific resources that that Arch, Jill and her colleagues have pulled together for you over time. There's been a lot of really great work done to identify federal funding streams that can be used for respite, as well as some state funding streams that can be used for respite. Looking at some Medicaid waivers that can be leveraged. So you've created a really nice set of resources, and have some nice opportunities to learn from each other and to learn from what other folks have done. And Jill is letting me know that survey was sent last week. Thank you, Jill, for reminding me. That was sent with the materials that you received. So you can contact Jill if, for some reason, that email did not reach you. And if your email inbox is anything like mine right now, it's entirely possible that it didn't, because it's a little full. But please feel free to send any questions that you have, certainly to Jill. She's an amazing resource for you all. I've included my email and Nalini's email. We look forward to connecting with all of you again in September via conference call, and I have successfully saved some time to answer questions at the end, which I am not always good at, because this was a lot of content to get through in 90 minutes. But I am happy to to answer any questions. And Jill or Emily, if you have any closing things to note or to moderate, you guys just jump in when you need to. But I've got the question box open and am ready to receive any questions via the question box. And Emily, I guess you can let us know if anyone's raised their hand with questions.
Yep. Well, this is Jill. I wanted to quickly respond to whomever asked the question about more information about getting started on voucher programs and combining funding streams from different state agencies. We do have our participant-directed guidebook that was prepared for us by the National Resource Center on participant-directed care. And included in that guidebook are case studies of Alabama and Oklahoma with additional information from other states that do, like Tennessee, that do similar things. So if you haven't had a chance to ever take a look at that voucher guidebook, I encourage you to do that because there are some specific information. We, of course, have had the folks from Oklahoma and from other states do several webinars and phone calls for us on the details of their voucher respite programs. Again, all this information is on the website, and we can always answer more questions about that in more detail. And on the survey, it was sent out on July the 10th, along with the electronically available materials that were prepared in conjunction with the sustainability workbook. I did add one little question to your 3 questions, Sean. And that was what specific sustainability challenges are you currently facing? Again, you don't have to do, a 20-page dissertation to answer these questions. In fact, we're asking you to limit it to 2 to 3 pages, double-spaced. We know we're not giving you a lot of time to respond. And August might be a difficult time for you to engage in using the workbooks, August and September, but we hope at least some of you will be interested and we'll really have a wonderful experience working with Sean and Nalini and get some personal attention and using these materials. And we're quite eager to know how useful the materials are. We think they'll be wonderfully useful, but we really would love to hear firsthand from you to see how it's going.
Sure, and Jill, if I can add just for folks, we we are at the point where we have an opportunity to do some revisions to our sustainability workbook and the materials because we're running out of the current print run of them. So as we've been working with groups and as we've been out on the road and learning about current trends and issues in sustainability, we've been collecting all of that information, and we really appreciate the opportunity to learn from lots of different federal grantees from different agencies to really get a pulse on what works and what doesn't work. So we find this really to be a really important opportunity and look forward to engaging with you. There was a question about whether the personal attention or the exemplar opportunities are going to be available in the future after this round. And I'm not the one to answer that. I'm sure that's a question for Jill and Greg, but they do sound as though they're committed to the sustainability of your programs and interested in getting you resources. So that may be something that you can that can be made available into the future.
We can certainly gauge interest on that and explore that possibility. Were there any other questions from anyone?
I don't see any other questions, Jill, so we might be looking pretty close to 4:30 on my clock. So
yeah, that's it's here
time
too.
To close it out.
Well, I want to thank both Sean and Nalini for being there. Both of these wonderful women have done a great job of putting these materials together and have drawn on their expertise in working across many programs and in many states and even with federal agencies. So thank you very much again for being willing to be a resource to our grantees and to our members. And I want to thank them again, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And feel free to send me any additional follow-up questions that you might think of after you get off the webinar. We're still available to respond to questions after the fact. And don't forget to look for the link to the archived webinar. And if you did not receive any of these materials that we've been talking about, please let me know right away, and we'll make sure that you get them. So thank you again, Sean and Nalini, and thank you, Greg, for being here today. And thanks to our grantees, and we will send you out our schedule of new conference calls for Lifespan Respite Grantees. The first one will be in September, where we'll hear back from these exemplar sites about their experiences with the sustainability materials. And hopefully we'll see all of you at the National Respite Conference in Boston in October. So thank you all very much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sean and Nalini.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
All right, thank you.